BookTok has turned the literary industry into fast fashion. If you forget everything about a book after you read it, did you really love it? People hate on Colleen Hoover books because her demographic is mostly women. Sure, maybe some people do, I'll give you that, but I personally hate on Colleen Hoover books because they're bad. Hi, hello, I hope you're taking care of yourself. If you're new here, my name is Lexi, and one thing about me is I speak the truth on this channel. I do not pull punches, and as somebody who has famously strong opinions, I thought that it would be really cool today to unpack some of yours on this channel in this video together. So I asked over on my Instagram, which you can follow if you want. I really only use it for things exactly like this or to complain sometimes. I asked for your hot takes and I received more than one girl can possibly hope to endure. Like, some of you had a lot of things to say. And yeah, I have a lot of them in front of me. I'm going to read them, react, debate you a little bit if I think you're wrong. But if you submitted something and you don't see your take, you are in the overwhelming majority. Like, there were a lot of good ones and I simply cannot get to all of them because I don't want to be here for 4 hours. But I appreciate you submitting nevertheless. You guys gave me a lot of really good options to discuss in this video. Also, as a disclaimer, I'm engaging in vulnerability with you today by just sharing my deep and true opinions on Maine. And I don't want this video to accidentally make a space for people to just sound off at each other in my comments. Like, it's okay to disagree on things. You can still love and respect somebody even if you think that one of their takes is dumb. So just try not to be mean. Be civil, okay? Okay. But yeah, that's the preamble. But before we get into this real quick, I just have a word from the sponsor of today's video, which is Parade. I have worked with Parade in the past, and at this point I feel like I can say with confidence that if you are the kind of person who finds wearing a bra to be a sensory nightmare, Parade will genuinely make your life like 10 times better. This time around, I have added 2 new bralettes into my small collection of daily drivers, and this red one that I'm wearing right now in particular is an absolute dream. It is the Plunge bralette in Blackberry, and it's made of my absolute favorite Parade fabric, which is their silky mesh. And I love this bralette and everything that I have from them in this fabric type because it feels as close as humanly possible to wearing absolutely nothing. Like, it's just me and my skin against the world, which is my ideal situation when it comes to bralettes, but it also feels secure. Like, it molds to fit my exact shape, and I just love it. And I should probably wash it more often, but you know what? It's fine. I'm a simple girl. I also got these super cute striped pajama shorts that I just live my life in every single day. The material for them is so silky smooth. It's their plush satin, and they're also cute enough where with a basic tank like I'm wearing right now, I can go outside right after waking up and not only not feel shame, but feel like legitimately really cute. Anyways, if you're interested in any of this or just in finding affordable basics that actually fit you and make you feel good, I strongly recommend heading over to the Parade website and using the code NOVO40 to get 40% off everything on the website that isn't already on sale, which is just a fantastic deal if you're looking to stock up at the end of the summer. Thank you again to Parade for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate it. Let's get back to it. All right, hello, welcome back. Let's begin with some chill appetizers before we actually get into the main course. I am going to be handling all of the hot takes in this video with appropriate thermal protection. Please laugh. I think that this is honestly a really good bit. Also, nobody comments on how I need to get a haircut. Like, I know. Nobody knows more than me how badly I need to cut my bangs. I can't get in until Monday. It is what it is. This is just how it's going to be for a little while. But anyways, moving on. I like real people on the cover. You have an aesthetic sensibility that I think I might go the rest of my life never really understanding. I don't think I've ever seen a book with a real person on it and thought to myself, that's a great cover. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a book with a real person on it and not thought to myself that any other cover would be superior to what we have. Basically, the only exception to that are books that are heavily stylized pictures of real people. Like, you can probably see it behind me right now. My Dark Vanessa is a great example of that. Zoomed in, artsy, black and white. There's room for real people in situations like that, but I probably shouldn't be able to see like your whole face down to your torso. And don't even talk to me about shirtless men on the covers of books. You don't even stand a chance. I'm not going to dignify that with a specific response. Stop using hiss, snarled. It's weird. I completely agree with this. Romance and fantasy authors just love it when people make animal sounds in books. Like, we also get some cooing, some barking, some growling at inauspicious times. You know, I feel like said, simple, demure, said is an underrated word that would really make a lot of these scenes easier to take seriously. 5-star scales don't work. I agree with this, actually, but only because pretending that you can make an objective metric out of something that has 0 objective distribution or rules for usage is a very, very silly thing to do. Like, 3 people on Goodreads who are rating the same book 4 stars could have entirely different reasons for doing so. One person might have loved it and thought it was absolutely awesome, but it was just missing something that would give it a 5-star rating. One person might have thought it was pretty mid, but it still gets 4 stars sometimes because like any book they finish gets 4 stars. And the third person might have just thought it was pretty solid, like good, maybe even great, but not perfect. But all 3 of these people are giving that book the exact same score. And what you see when you look up that book on Goodreads is a collective rating that ends up being entirely meaningless because there's no way to standardize everybody's rating scales. But with all of that said, who cares? I think rating things is fun. I rate movies in my Notion on 6 completely subjective metrics, just for shits, and then make charts out of the data. Like, how I rate things in each category absolutely changes year to year, like how hard I am on films. So there's no value that's really coming out of this data, but it's fun. I don't know. Trying to make an objective measure out of anything as subjective as your enjoyment of art is going to result in something useless for you. So yeah, it doesn't work. But I think that half of the point of a scale is that people like having opinions on things. They like feeling accomplished when they finish something. Like, you get your little dopamine hit when you click on your stars. So in that capacity, it does work. It's very successful. That's why so many people rate things. But I would never take star ratings or a Goodreads score particularly seriously, especially if you don't understand the metrics that a person is using when they review a book and give it that rating. Like, that's the meat and potatoes. Somebody's reasons for giving something a rating are what's going to actually tell you if you're going to like a book, because something I give 3 stars might be a 5-star book for you, or vice versa. It's all a matter of perspective, you know? This is a media one. I have a lot to say about this. Discourse on what counts or not as reading comes from people thinking of reading as a morally superior hobby. Yeah, I got a lot of responses that were like, audiobooks don't count as reading and audiobooks do count as reading, but I'm choosing this person as a platform to talk about this because I feel like this person knows what's up. I really agree with this take that all of this discourse is kind of stupid, and here's why. My question to people who feel very strongly about other people like cheating their way, in quotes, through reading by using audiobooks, or who have beef with people who read 8 books a month because 3 of them were audiobooks and shouldn't count, is really just, why do you care? Why are you putting someone else down? Why does this matter in your life at all? Is it because you want to feel better about yourself in your hobbies with your like tweed pants and monocle and ink-stained hands? Do you really need to differentiate yourself as a better and more evolved reader just because somebody else doesn't read in like the purest form like you do? And that's also annoying to me because, not to be an insufferable humanities major, but what is the purest form of reading? Oral storytelling traditions are way older than written storytelling traditions in the scope of human history. Do you consider the Iliad to be a book? What if I told you that was composed for oral performance? It's literally ancient audiobooking, and it was eventually written down, but only because it had been orally transmitted. So is this not a book? Like, am I not really reading the Iliad just because I'm not consuming it in its original spoken form? And the same is true for a lot of ancient religious texts, like the Quran, the Bible, Vedic chants. You can read the Vedas. You can go to the store and buy a copy of the Quran. So are they not books just because they were historically preserved through oral transmission before they were ever written down? Are they not books, even though oral tradition is still really, really important today in many religions worldwide? Or, like, to get less annoying with that and more into the realm of something mundane that you would see out in the wild, say you meet someone for the first time at the mall or something, and you find out that they've read your favorite book. You have a great conversation about it, you're in line to pick up coffee or whatever, but you're bonding over your favorite characters, over the best moments, and then 10 minutes into this conversation, they mention that they actually listened to the audiobook version. What are you going to do, you anti-audiobook truthers? Are you going to be like, oh, actually, you didn't read it? You lied to me when you said that you read this book that we both love and talked about in depth. Like, no, you're not going to say that, because all that matters is that both of you consumed and enjoyed the story. Whether it's technically reading, like manually moving your eyes and looking at words on paper, does not matter at all, and is really only worth arguing in a philosophical sense as food for thought about different kinds of media. But nobody argues this online in a philosophical sense. I only really see this used to dunk on people who listen to audiobooks because maybe they're busy with like childcare or work, or maybe they're blind. Are blind people illiterate? There are books by blind people. Are you saying that they can't read their own books? Is Braille reading? Like, you're not reading with your eyes. It's a different sense. It's touch. Is that reading? And if so, how is that actually different from audiobooks? The answer to that is, it's really not. Despite reading being so individual, people love using it to justify their own intelligence, their own down-to-earth connection with paper crafts and books and ink, when actually none of that is relevant. Physical books are just a method of consuming stories, and you can consume that same story via Bluetooth headphones if that is more accessible for you, and I would never know the difference talking to you about it unless you told me. Can you listen to audiobooks on 3x? Yes. You can also skim books that you're reading physically and get through them suspiciously fast with your eyes. How you consume a story is none of my business. I'm just glad that you did. I hope that it gives us something to talk about together. And that's coming from somebody, by the way, who does not like audiobooks. Like, I find them to be pretty hard to focus on. They're not my preferred method of reading, but you will never catch me slandering on the name of audiobook enjoyers, because to do so, again, I think is kind of slandering on human history. And maybe that's dramatic, but I'm dramatic. And I also kind of think it's true. I just know that this is going to be a long video. This is so not casual and chill. My apologies. Next up is consuming over 10 books a month isn't truly consuming books. Similarly to the last take, this one, it's just, why do you care? Why do you care how much other people read around you? What do you know about their lives or about the time that they have? In the same way that I think it is ridiculous for anybody who reads like 100 books a year to look down on people who read maybe 5 as not being real readers. It's weird to assume that anybody who reads a lot does not internalize the books that they read. Some people, including myself, depending on the era of my life, spend literally all of their free time reading books, which is probably not the healthiest thing in the world, but they do it anyways. I would know. No TV, no movies, just books as much as they possibly can. So you end up getting through a lot of them. Who are you to say that none of them are making a dent? Like, maybe they wouldn't for you. Maybe you prefer to take a more relaxed and cerebral pace with the books that you read, which is also completely fine for the record. But it's a really myopic perspective to have, that just because I wouldn't be able to read and engage with 10 books a month means that nobody else can on this entire planet. Like, if you're a grad student in the humanities, you're probably reading, depending on your program, like 2 or 3 books a week, and your whole job is thinking about them critically. And these are people who might be reading books on their own time outside because they just like to read, hence why they're doing humanities PhDs. Some people just have the ability to make a lot of time for reading. That doesn't inherently make them shallow readers. Those are two completely different things. So yeah, I think that shaming people for how much they read, like whether you're shaming people because they read too much and you don't believe them, or you're shaming people because they read too little and you don't think they really care, it's stupid. It doesn't involve you. Like, grow up. Allow everybody to be a part of the reader space. Honestly, it's good that we all read different amounts of books, because people like me who have no life and make bad decisions about how we spend our spare time, we can help people who don't have as much time to read only pick bangers, only pick really good books because they've been vetted by all of the poor souls like myself who read a gajillion. Also though, with this and responding to some kind of like related takes that I got in my inbox, I do always think it's worth noting that it's not normal to read this much. Like, off of book social media in the real world, you will see a lot more people who fall into the camp of reading a handful of books per year than you will people who are reading 10 a month. And there is a real pressure to get through more books than we did last year and read more and read faster. And I think that that's where takes like this one come from. But this opinion makes an enemy out of the wrong thing. It's not that there are individual people out in the world who are reading way too much but understanding nothing and making all of us feel bad. It's that most of us live in cultures that base our worth on productivity and on how much of anything, your job, your hobbies, you can do or consume or produce, and reward you for meeting these unrealistic standards that are not good for you as a human being. Those are the things that are doing the damage. It's not the girl on Instagram who read 15 books last month and shares literally 0 responsibilities with you. It's unfortunately society. It's the way that the world is set up to seep joy out of everything, even mundane things like hobbies, by just making it about how much you can do rather than about how much you're enjoying yourself while you're doing it. So don't be mad at that girl or at anybody who reads a ton of books. Be mad about how the system is set up to make you jealous and make you fail when you're just like trying to live a normal and balanced existence. And just try to accept yourself no matter how much you're able to read, because the good thing is that you're prioritizing reading at all, no matter how many books you're able to get through in a year. You can't rate a book if you do not finish it. That's what DNF stands for, if you don't know. I see this all the time on Goodreads, and I agree with this take. I think that it's definitely disingenuous to rate things that you do not finish, regardless of reason. You can definitely leave a review without a rating talking about why the book was ass. I mean, technically you can do whatever you want. You can rate it. I can't stop you. As we've already discussed, everything on review sites is completely subjective anyways. But in my opinion, if you don't have the full picture of a book, no matter how bad you think it was, you didn't brave the trenches. You can't give it a 1-star review like the rest of us who did, okay? It's just not right. And for the record, books can also improve. Like, maybe something that starts really rough can't get 5 stars, but it might work its way up to 3 if the ending is really good. This can happen. It's not impossible. And this is why I won't pretend to know anything about a whole book unless I have finished the whole book. And at that point, I can hate as much as I want. It's my right, but not until then. 2 related and competing takes. Next, DNFing is perfectly fine versus giving up partway through is a sign of weakness. I think people who DNF books live lives that have significantly more peace and joy within them than mine. I am a massive proponent of not wasting your limited amount of hours on this planet with things that you do not enjoy. If you are hating a book, if dragging yourself through it is going to put you into a reading slump, just move on. It's going to be okay. There is just not enough time in the day, in my opinion, to waste on things that you absolutely hate. But with that said, Not me though. I hate taking my own advice. Actually, it's my least favorite thing. I never DNF anything. I can't do it. I need to have a complete opinion on everything that I read. And like I just said, I can only really do that if I have actually ran the gauntlet and gotten to the end of whatever monstrosity I decided to pick up. It's a curse that I have. And honestly, I think that refusing to DNF like I do is the real sign of weakness, or maybe just a sign of too much pride. I'm not really sure, but in any case, don't be like me with this one. I can confirm that it's not the way to go here. First or third person present tense is freaky and distracting. I hear this take all the time. I feel like there's a small contingent of present tense haters out in the world, and I swear to God, I don't think I've ever cared about this in an active way. Like, I'll read a review after I finish a book and somebody will be like, had to DNF. The present tense was absolutely unbearable. And I will realize for the first time that the book was written that way. And this isn't because I'm not paying attention to the form that a story takes or the style in which something is written. It's just, maybe this is just me, but a well-written book is a well-written book. I don't really get hung up on perspective or tense unless it is obviously bad. Like, there are definitely books where the writing feels very stilted or difficult to follow, and maybe that's partially because they're written in present tense, but really I think they're just not very good books. And alternatively, there are also definitely books that I think could have really benefited from being in first person instead of third person, or vice versa, but like, that's almost always a symptom of something else that's going on in the book. Like, the pacing is bad, or maybe you don't really feel like you're getting to know the characters, or maybe you don't know enough about the world and about what's going on. It's pretty rare that tense and perspective are the sources of the problem. Like, normally the problem is just the book isn't very engaging or well done, but maybe that's just me. I'm just not really that picky, I guess. I'm just one girl. Like, a good book is a good book, no matter how it's written, in my opinion. All readers would benefit from a year of reading fanfic. I think this is hilarious, and as somebody who has been through basic training, if you will, I can't even say that I disagree. Not even because this is funny, like, it is funny, it's iconic, but I also feel like it's legitimately really valuable to engage with a community that just loves something so much that they not only need to understand every single piece of it, but they also need more of it, and they create their own stories to fill in that gap. There's just something really beautiful about fandom culture, and I think that it justifiably gets clowned on for a lot of legit reasons depending on the fandom, but overall, despite their flaws, I think that fan communities are really special, and they give you a much greater appreciation for an overarching body of work. And also, it prepares you to not get got by a lot of what goes viral on book social media because it's enjoyed by people who have not done their time in the way that I have. That's a nice side effect that I got for free because of Tumblr and AO3. Some AO3 authors should stay AO3 authors. With all of that said, this is definitely also true. Glad they're getting their bags, though. Good for them. This one is going to be a controversial one. BookTok is just written porn culture. People don't want to read, they just want the smut. I got some variations of this a few times, and I hate this take. And this is coming from someone who is more than willing to clown on trashy books if they're asked. Like, you should know that, I think, if you're a denizen of this channel. But a few thoughts on this. I'll try to keep this concise. First of all, I think that presenting BookTok, or any reader space for that matter, as monolithic is a purposefully reductive thing to do. Like, almost everybody who says that all BookTok is smut knows very well that not all BookTok is smut. When you choose to generalize a community that has hundreds of thousands of people inside of it into one singular thing, you know what you're doing. And if you honest to God are shocked by this development, if you've only ever seen entry-level TikTok romance recs on your FYP, I can assure you that the onion has many more layers than that. There are accounts focused on sci-fi fantasy, on literary fiction. There are accounts that prioritize uplifting BIPOC voices. I have personally been recommended books that I might not have otherwise known existed if it wasn't for BookTok. And just because there is a large and viral component of BookTok that recommends smut or romance books that you have tried and hate, or you haven't tried but choose to hate anyways, that doesn't mean that there isn't a massive amount of diversity in the creator space. I was on BookTok before I was ever on BookTube. Generalizing everything as smut is a purposeful decision that you are making. You are choosing to ignore everything else that the platform has done for other sub-communities, for just making people read in general for the first time as an adult. You're ignoring all of that in favor of making your point. But secondly, even if we work together on this, even if we ignore everything that I just said and just say as a thought experiment that all of BookTok was just the kind of trashy romance novels that I know that you're probably talking about when you make this point, Colleen Hoover, Fourth Wing, Emily Henry, ACOTAR, a lot of the most popular books that you'll see coming out of the romance or romantasy genres will have between 1 and 5 maximum smutty scenes. Maybe 5%, 15 if I'm being generous, of the book being dedicated to the spice, right? That's not porn. That's not even erotica. That's like the romance genre equivalent to big budget drama TV shows like Game of Thrones, both in terms of amount of sex and in how that sex is used to drive forward the story, including sex as a tertiary element in a story that's about two people overcoming conflict, falling in love, dealing with whatever loser side characters are trying to fuck up their lives. It's not porn. It's not. A smut scene in a good romance book is not actually very different in terms of explicit content from a really metal and bloody resolution in the final fight of a good fantasy novel. And just like with the fantasy scene, you can respond to it emotionally. You can be like, that was dope, that was a good time, that was hot. And that doesn't make you any more addicted to porn than enjoying the violent and explicit death of a villain makes you likely to like bludgeon somebody in your office with a mace. Like, it's just you engaging on a human level with the content that you're consuming. And for the record, sexuality is a lot more core to the lives of most people and the relationships of most people than violence is, hopefully. But it's policed so much more. And I'm not saying that the majority of these books are good. I'm not making qualitative judgment. I'm just saying that it's weird that the problems that we have with them are not these books are bad, and they're instead this is porn, why are we addicted to it? And there are definitely books on BookTok that are smuttier than what I've just described, that edge closer to being erotica. And you'll also get occasionally like the Haunting Adelines, the Penelope Douglases, but those books are viral in the wow, this is so crazy, this is so taboo way. They're not viral in the everybody needs to read this way that the Fourth Wings, the Colleen Hoovers, the Emily Henrys, the more standard issue romance books are viral. But let's make this an even hotter take with this hypothetical. Let's go 12 layers deep, because even if it really was all erotica on BookTok, outright erotica, 50% of every book dedicated to smut, why do you care what other people are reading? Is it because they're talking about it? Are we just supposed to not talk about it and silently go about our business instead? Not to be insufferable again, I'm so sorry, but humans have been exploring sexuality in art for thousands and thousands of years. And I would say that books are actually a really safe and decent option comparatively to other things that you could be doing in the modern world. Like, you're not hurting anybody by reading a book. The way I look at it, it doesn't involve me. What you fill your Kindle with is between you and God. It's none of my business. But yeah, all of this is not to say that these books or these trends are above criticism. We're gonna talk more about that later. This is not to say that people who are like, where's my spice in young adult books? People who are like, I can't read anything that isn't 80% smut. People who are going into comment sections of teenage boys in bookstores and telling them to read Haunting Adeline. This is not to say that these people don't exist. They do, and I feel a deep shattering inside of my spirit every time that I see them on the internet. But there are freaks everywhere, in every hobby. Everything you do, there will be somebody who decides to make it weird for everybody else. And with BookTok, these people are a weird minority that is frequently blown up into representing the entire thing in an effort to virtue signal superior intelligence. Like, I would never lower myself to reading BookTok books. I only read by candlelight in 8-point Garamond font. I only consume smut through hand-carved ancient Sumerian glyptic art. Real intellectuals like myself use clay pots. Like, that is how some people sound when they generalize all of BookTok or all of the romance genre and go on to critique it in bad faith. Don't be like that. It's okay to read a book just because you enjoy it, just because it's fun and about love and makes you happy. Me personally, I'm not massively into like 90% of the smut that I read in romance books. Like, I'm a yearner, I'm a slow burn darling, and that's okay. It's okay to like reading romance books but skip every smut scene because they just kind of make you uncomfortable. It's okay if you like reading romance books because they give you the opportunity to explore sexuality in a safe environment. It's okay to feel, as I do, that even though a lot of viral TikTok romance books suck, there are also a lot of viral TikTok romance books that are incredible and moving stories. Like, if you hate everything that you see on BookTok, get a better algorithm. I don't know, normalize reading the first couple of pages and the back of the book before you buy it inside of a bookstore, so that way you stop posting that BookTok robbed you. And stop making people feel bad for liking things. Like, reading is not a club where we can only accept the top 10,000 most intellectual girlies. No, there's space for everybody here. Stop gatekeeping. Anyways, I'm gonna stop rambling about this so that I can ramble about other things. I've thought a lot about doing a video on this, but I feel like it's been kind of done to death recently. And obviously, it should go without saying, there are a lot of critiquable individual problems inside of BookTok communities. There are widely recommended books that suck and are problematic. I mean, I talk about them a lot on this channel. But equating the romance genre to porn, or pretending that all of BookTok must be united under the banner of Colleen Hoover or Credence or whatever other terrifying work that you have seen come out of that abyss, it's ridiculous. calculus. You know when you rub together more than 2 brain cells that that's not the entire platform. But moving on to a related take, BookTok is doing irreversible damage to young women. Or just any flavor of BookTok glamorizes abuse, BookTok romanticizes like truly diabolical book boyfriends. I got a lot of that flavor of stuff in my inbox. And you maybe might think, based on my last rant, that I would reject this wholesale for similar reasons, but I actually do think that a lot of the titles that have really blown up on BookTok and that have brought new people, especially young people, into the space and into reading in general are really problematic. But unfortunately, I don't really think that this is different from the way that all of media has always indoctrinated young women to expect really unhealthy behaviors from the people that we choose to love in relationships. Lots of classic rock, all of those big romantic comedies from the 80s and 90s that we all love, horribly problematic in terms of behavior from men. And this is where maybe my hot take comes in. But I actually think that things like that are problematic in a way that is a lot more insidious than a BookTok book about a mafia man who buys you. In romantic comedies, these are real seeming, nice, hot men who can just ignore boundaries for fun and do bad things, but it's okay because they really like you and you should give in anyways, even after you say no. Like, that's a situation that is a lot more applicable to real life than what you'll see in a dark romance book. And once again, maybe this is a hot take, maybe this is just me having too much faith in generalized media literacy, but I do feel like there's an obvious level of fantasy that exists in these viral dark romance books that kind of shields you from taking it too seriously or deluding yourself into thinking that you want to be kidnapped in real life. Almost nobody, other than a few random freaks who want to be like chased through the woods by a man in a mask and then post about it online for some reason, almost nobody is actually getting harmed by the really viral stalker ex-stalkee mafia stuff because it's not realistic enough to really set you up to fail. And for the most part, speaking as kind of a dark romance hater, overwhelmingly the genre is very pro trigger warning and pro only read what you know that you can handle and I will give you the information to help you make that decision. Like, almost all of them have a list of trigger warnings before they even have a dedication inside of the book. And so even though a lot of the really big books that blow up into the mainstream out of dark romance are majorly side-eye, in my opinion, like on an individual level, it is low-hanging fruit. Like, it is so easy to find problematic things to critique inside of dark romance books. The books that are actually a lot more insidious, in my opinion, are more based in the real world, just like all of the other tools that are used to program young girls. I'm talking the Colleen Hoovers, to some extent the Twisted Loves, the contemporary romances that feel more based in reality. And shit has always sucked. I think it's really unfortunate how our media conditions us to accept toxic behavior as normal. Like many young women, I like to think of myself as a very smart and discerning person when I was growing up, and I still ended up in a raucously abusive relationship when I was about 17 years old with somebody who truly could not have given less of a fuck about me, despite the fact that, again, I thought it would never happen to me. So yeah, when I read a Colleen Hoover book that has a truly atrocious male lead who just does deranged shit and then at the end of the book is redeemed, I guess, because he says sorry once and cries a little bit and he really won't do it again this time, I swear. And then I go on TikTok and I see young women who are like, I love him. I wish I could meet somebody just like him in my life. It makes me a little bit sad. I hate the overwhelming popularity of books like this because they're so big right now that teenagers will go and pick them up solely because they're popular and they want to be on trend. And they're not forced to suspend their disbelief. Like, they really might not know that the relationships inside of these books are not aspirational. There are like 2 Colleen Hoover books that I've read that call a spade and clearly demonstrate behavior as problematic. All of the other ones that I've read have bad people who do problematic things but are postured as these wonderful book boyfriends. And in isolation, does this poison the youth? Like, does this do irreversible damage to young women? No. Obviously not, but in combination with all of the other things, all of the other ways that we condition girls to accept the absolute worst, all of the he's only mean to you because he likes you, he only pushes you around in the playground because he has a crush, all of the Ezras from Pretty Little Liars, all of the angels from Buffy, like all of that combines into not giving you the tools and the wherewithal and the knowledge to defend yourself from ending up in abusive situations. And it's really unfortunate that things like viral contemporary romance books contribute to this cycle rather than subverting it. It would be really cool if they didn't, but that's not entirely BookTok's fault. It's just how media is, unfortunately. And for the record, there are a lot of really respectful and consensual and wholesome relationships in BookTok books that can be really healing to read about if you're coming out of a toxic situation. They're just not usually the ones that go mega viral, whatever that says about the world that we currently live in. Okay, last related prompt on this topic while we're here, and then we'll move on for real. People hate on Colleen Hoover books because her demographic is mostly women. Sure, maybe some people do, I'll give you that, but I personally hate hate on Colleen Hoover books because they're bad. I think there is definitely an undercurrent of misogyny in some of the ways that people talk about romance books on the internet. I mean, just scroll through some of the responses I got in my inbox for this prompt, right? I feel like you can usually tell when somebody is not arguing in good faith because they kind of just hate women and don't really know what to do about that other than just hate on things that women enjoy. But I will die on the hill that it's not inherently misogynistic to call a book bad or share a negative review. There's a lot of weird toxic positivity sometimes in the romance space that I think weakens the genre overall. Like, you have to like everything, and if you don't, then you hate women and you're just putting people down for things that they enjoy, and not everything has to be that serious. I mean, like, even in my videos, I feel like I always need to get ahead of the I hate women allegations by like adding a million disclaimers whenever I make a roast video of a book that I know a lot of people enjoy. And that sucks because I think that talking about things critically is how you end up with better books, with better trends, with ultimately a more interesting and diverse genre. You should be able to engage with anything critically. You don't have to by any means. You can also just like the thing, and that's okay. But you should be able to critique things without it getting you strung up in the court of public opinion. Me giving a negative review for something doesn't mean that you can't like it. And if my negative review makes you get defensive or change your mind, you might not have the most solid and best reasons for liking that book to begin with. I love reading negative opinions of my favorite books. I'm a freak like that. I think how different people respond to art differently, it's one of the most interesting things about it. But that's just me. That might be a weird take. The point is, me not liking something doesn't mean that you can't like that thing. It's seriously okay to have different opinions than other people, and you shouldn't make people feel bad for expressing a real point of criticism. As a side note, I also really strongly encourage people to meaningfully engage with whatever it is that you're shitting on. You will never hear me slander something on this channel that I have not myself given a fair chance. Controversial, but I feel like reading a Colleen Hoover book every once in a while keeps me sharp. It keeps me on trend. She's popular for a reason. Her books are punchy, they're well paced, they're super easy to read. The plots are sensationalist, but they're nothing if not interesting. And because I am able to acknowledge that she is a successful writer, which obviously she is, she occupies like half of the New York Times paperback list at any given time. Because I can acknowledge that, it gives my criticism a better foundation. But whatever, that was actually unrelated. The point being, it should be okay to be a hater. Expressing a negative opinion of a book is not the same as calling people who enjoyed it stupid or bad. Like, the fact that we equate those two things sometimes, and it makes it really difficult to give criticism on books that is justified, is really weird to me in the book world. Emily Henry books are overrated and her writing is extremely shallow. I got a lot of these responses, either about Emily Henry in general or about her specific books, but I also think it's worth mentioning that I got this. Emily Henry books made a grown man cry, and I will read everything she writes forever now. So really goes to show the range that this woman has. Look, in my opinion, I think that Emily Henry is the real deal. If you're looking for a romantic story with a happily ever after that still has a really strong emotional core, almost like a substantially more evolved Hallmark movie in terms of tone, and I don't mean that derogatory, like I mean that as a positive. If you're looking for that, I don't think that there's anybody doing it quite like she is. Her characters are just so interesting and flawed, and the problems that they face in her books end up feeling very serious and true to life. So these relationships that spring out of the pits of despair, they feel real. They feel like people you could have met in real life, if not very similar to struggles that you yourself have experienced. But with that said, if you don't like romance, if you don't enjoy these kinds of stories, if you don't mesh with her style, I can see why you would think that she is overrated. Emily Henry at this point has blown past the event horizon in terms of popularity. Like, she's one of the only romance authors that is releasing new hardcovers in a genre where everything is paperback. And when you're this popular, no matter how universal her books feel, you're going to end up having more and more people who just don't mesh with them, but try them anyways. And one thing that book social media definitely does do is it falsely encourages people who should know very well they will not like a story or an author to falsely pick it up and give it a go anyways, just because of the hype. And it should never surprise you when you do that and you're disappointed. I also got a lot of babel hate, and to that I respond, that's okay. On the list of books that I really love, I don't think that babel is something I would recommend to absolutely everybody, because I feel like the reason that it hit so hard for me is because I am exactly the kind of person who would really fuck with it. And I did. It is slow, it is academic, it is kind of mustache twirling obvious who the villains in the story are. All of that is definitely true, but I feel like what it accomplished thematically was still really profound to me, even if what happened at the end was obvious. The depth of that book, in my opinion, is not in the villains, it's in all of these morally questionable and difficult decisions that the heroes in the story are kind of forced to make. That is where a lot of the brilliance came from, in my opinion. And it's just the kind of book for me where it hit me so hard emotionally that I felt able to overlook some of the flaws in the world building, some of the flaws in the fantasy elements that I see critiqued a lot. But yeah, I'm not surprised that of the books I recommend, it tends to be the most hit or miss for people. It just kind of feels like it comes with the terrain. I love it. I hope you loved it. But if you didn't, that's okay. It's okay if it didn't hit for you. We can have, once again, different opinions on things and still be friends. We can still hang out. out, me when I go outside, me when I touch grass. Permanent stickers on books are a crime. This is not a hot take. This is a take that I can hold with my bare hands. You know that, we both know it, but I'm still repeating it in this video because publishers and bookstores need to take the hint. Nobody likes these. Why are they still on books? Get them off, okay? Free us. I like or hate, I got a lot of both deckled or sprayed edges. Just lots of edge takes, lots of people expressing opinions on edges. Honestly, I got so many of these, like so many people have strong opinions that I just wanted to drop all of you into a little gladiator arena and watch you fight. But my take on this is very simple. If you don't know what deckled edges are, let me grab an example. There are books like this where every page is kind of a subtly different width and it gives the book kind of an old journal appearance. These are so impractical. Like if you want to refer back to anything at all, ever, good luck finding your page. It's like really infuriating to flip through a book with deckled edges and look for something specific. But low-key, despite that, I like them. I like the vibes. It's very like adventurer's knapsack, if you catch my drift. And yeah, like is it sacrificing the utility of something just to make it a little bit more aesthetic? Sure, but most of the time, if I want to mark off a quote to come back to, I'll just drop a little tab inside of the book, and that's fine. However, regarding sprayed edges, I feel pretty strongly that they always look bad on paperbacks. Like if I pull up to Barnes & Noble and there's a table of paperback books with typically it's a solid color sprayed edge, the problem is still there for the record if it's a pattern, but almost always with paperbacks, it's a solid color. It's icky, it's disgusting. It's not for me. I do think that they can look really cool on hardcover books, like when they have a more real border, I guess is the difference. But even then, sometimes it's really cool, but it's not my favorite. I feel like with special editions, I vastly prefer either new cover designs or like interior jacket art, things that you can do inside of the actual book. And I think that the whole craze around sprayed edges is honestly a little bit much, in my opinion. Mismatching spines and heights in a series are hot if they're all different. This is an incredibly brave thing to admit on the internet, and I want to recognize that, but I could not disagree more. Like, books that don't match make me irrationally upset for how little it actually impacts my life. But I want you to know that I wish I had this level of chill. I wish that it was accessible to me. If you forget everything about a book after you read it, did you really love it? There's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote about exactly this phenomenon that I really like that I'm gonna read to you. I cannot remember the books I've read any more than the meals I've eaten. Even so, they have made me. When you read a lot, when it's something that you love, your brain is not meant to remember everything. It's just not. It doesn't have the technology. It wouldn't have made it through the ranks of evolution if it did. And especially those of us with defective models due to mental illness or other factors. I forget important things regularly about the people I love, like my mother, my best friends, and forgetting a shared memory or a favorite food or how they take their coffee, it doesn't mean that I don't love those people. It just means that I forgot. And I try to circumvent that because I love those people by like taking literal notes on my friends, or with books by reviewing them on Goodreads so I have something to refer back to. But in any case, I actually have another quote by Maya Angelou that I want to share. This is the secondary sources section of the unpopular opinions video, I guess. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. In my opinion, I'm just one girl. It's not about how much you remember about a book. It's about the impression that something leaves you with. It's about how a really good book can hit you so hard that it subtly rewires the way that you think about yourself, your relationships, the world, even after you finished it. Even after you've forgotten the details of the event in the book that happened that made you change your perspective, that impact is still within you. That's why my favorite books are my favorites. It's less about how much I remember and more about the way that they made me feel, you know? Okay, I lied when I said that we were moving on earlier because I do actually have one more book talk related take that I want to talk about. Book talk has turned the literary industry into fast fashion. I get what is being said with takes like this, but I feel like comparing books to fast fashion is very disingenuous. I think it really downplays the ethical and environmental problems that fast fashion has. Like, books are made of paper. You can recycle paper. It's not polyester. It's not a material that will literally outlive you before it decomposes. Books are not hand sewn by children in sweatshops. They're not filling up landfills. Or even if they are, at least they'll decompose. Like, the reason that most people hate fast fashion, or at least should hate fast fashion, is because it's directly predating upon our desire for novelty and for being on trend and for getting new things as a result of the attention economy in order to generate a stream of products at increasingly low prices that come at the cost of horrific work conditions and like polluting our oceans and burning through our ozone layer. Obviously, you can discourse about overconsumption and about how we shouldn't want new things all of the time, but problems in fast fashion aren't really just about people wanting new things. It's about how corporations abuse the fact that people will buy new things to generate obscene profits at a horrific human and environmental cost. And the book equivalent of this are books that are created and pushed out on really fast cycles to jump onto some kind of trend that's happening in the book world. So like, for example, Iron Flame, the sequel to Fourth Wing, coming out in the same year as Fourth Wing, which is a ludicrously fast production process. And from what I have heard, that book was not particularly well executed, mostly because it really could have used more time and more editing. And a lot of viral romantasy books are like that. There are a lot of trendy new releases that don't actually have very much substance, that exist in part because they're on trend. But a ton of people flocking to the bookstore to buy a new romantasy release that ends up being garbage doesn't really hurt anybody except themselves. That's not fast fashion. Like, if you fuck up and you buy a book that you hate, you can just recycle it or donate it or give it away at almost no environmental consequence compared to anything else that you could be buying in the modern world. Like, almost certainly buying a burger at a fast food restaurant is way worse for the environment than buying a book at Barnes & Noble. So overconsumption with books, specifically in my opinion, is mostly relevant on an individual level. You should never feel pressure to spend a ton of money that you do not have on books. At the end of the day, owning a lot of books is a privilege that a lot of people don't have, and it doesn't make you less of a reader than Tim, Rick, or Kyle just because you don't have 3 full bookshelves of content on the wall behind you. Libraries are cool and incredibly useful and really do help make reading more accessible for people who cannot or just should not be individually buying every single book that they want to read. Even people who can afford to do that should be using libraries more often, both because it'll help them make smarter financial decisions and because libraries deserve to have more funding. But regardless of all of that, it's not bad to own a ton of books in the same way that it's bad to own a massive closet of Shein clothing. It's not, and pretending it is downplays the consequences on a global scale of fast fashion and overconsumption with clothes. There are individual consequences regarding overconsumption with books, especially again if you spend beyond your means. And there are consequences generally to overconsumption in society on a wide scale with literally everything. But like, of all of the things that you could collect and spend money on, if somebody wants to buy 3 copies of their favorite book, I wouldn't do it. It's not my bag, but you wanting to do that is not a moral failing. Like, it's okay to want to own books. This is another issue where I think that the shaming that happens sometimes with people with big collections is losing the plot a little bit. Like, it's not that people shouldn't be able to own books, it's that people shouldn't spend money they don't have on books. People shouldn't look at me, somebody with a YouTube channel that helps me afford to have books, and think that they have to have massive bookshelves in order to belong here, in order to class as a reader. Like, you don't. You should never feel like you have to, but it's also okay if you want to, if having a big library is one of your dreams. Also, regarding trends, which is the other piece of this puzzle, like people who think that tropes and trends are ruining literature as a whole because more bad things are being published simply because they're on trend, right? That's the other common comparison with fast fashion. I assure you that lowbrow, low-quality works of fiction have been popular for as long as there have been books. There have been poorly edited books as long as there have been books. And honestly, a lot of the worst ones today, in my opinion, are not even books that are getting trad published and taking up a spot that could go to some other higher quality, nebulous new book. The worst ones are self-published and answer to nobody and then go super viral. This is not me saying all self-published books are bad, but this is me saying that a lot of self-published books did not have editors. So to think that there's no new space for good books anymore, like something new is ruining reading all of the time. This is the current flavor of the month, right? It's not like real literature. The litfic, historical fiction, nonfiction, very cerebral books aren't getting published anymore. People love to claim that. People love to say that there are no good books anymore solely based on vibes with zero backing for that statement. But I assure you that there are books winning the Booker Prize every single year. They're still getting written and published and critically acclaimed. And the only reason that you think that books were better 10 years ago than they are now is because you're forgetting about all of the garbage that was also out 10 years ago. The books that last, the books that stand the test of time, with some exceptions, are almost always the good ones. And it's going to be the same for this era of literature. Because are there books that are pumped out too fast, unedited, bad, wish they'd had more time to cook? Yeah, but they're not ruining reading. Like, you can pick up something else. Once again, picking what works for you, what media you engage with, that's your responsibility. You can just go with something different. And in any case, fast fashion is definitely not the right comparison. Okay, I need to meet my parents for dinner or they will disown me, but I'm gonna come back and film like the last 3 takes. Time cut to 2 hours from now after I answer a lot of uncomfortable questions. Okay, hello, I'm back. I've re-angled the camera because I had a lamp over there. It's like 9 p.m., but we're going to persevere. Okay, this one has like 3 responses, but they're all related. We're gonna be talking about all of them. People only hate classics because we were forced to read them in high school, but some slap. Just because a book is a classic doesn't mean that it's good. and then reading classics doesn't make you pretentious. All of those are kind of interconnected, in my opinion. And I do want to say, just with everything else that I've talked about in this video, I think it's important to touch on the fact that there is a phenomenon that exists, especially with slighted romance readers who feel like they're being called stupid by the pseudo-intellectuals who are calling them stupid. There is a phenomenon where those people will go on to say that classics are bad or boring or not worth reading. And what I'm about to say will seem unrelated at first, but bear with me. I feel like people just have to learn to accept that you can think that something is a wonderful 5-star book. It can be a really emotional book for you, like the entire package, and you can still recognize that it's not a masterpiece, that it has problems, that it's not above criticism. Something does not have to be perfect in order for it to be perfect for you. Because likewise, you can read something that on an objective craft level just accomplishes something that is really phenomenal. You know, it stood the test of time for a reason, and you can absolutely fucking hate it. It might really not hit for you. Like, it might disappoint you to the fact that you're wondering why in the world this has been preserved for so long in the canon, but your opinion does not make it bad. You know, I'm sorry to be insufferable on main again for like the 15th time in this video, but there is no objective truth with art. Things that are widely considered to be classics are considered to be classics because for a long time, a lot of people have deemed it to be valuable and influential and good. But even when those books were initially published, there were detractors. There were people who thought that it was bad and who were critical of it. That's just how having opinions goes. Nothing is actually universally acclaimed. And when you don't like a classic, you are only the latest person in a probably long line of haters. And that's okay, because it's okay not to like things. But you not liking them does not make them bad or not valuable to other people. As a side note with this, I feel like a lot of classics fall into a literary fiction space in terms of genre. And that's the case, I think, because a lot of books stand the test of time because they are such good time capsules of whatever period that they're seeking to describe. With litfic in general, like, it's more vibey, it's more set and setting and character focused and just really feeling like you are there and peering into the brains of the people that you're reading about. And speaking from my high school experience, obviously yours might have been different, but I feel like my English classes were so interwoven with history classes. Like, you spend so much time talking about things like historical context and how the book is able to represent what was actually going on in its era. And you can typically see those things a lot clearer when you're mostly reading litfic books that give you a lot of time to kind of ponder and exist along with the characters. But one of the consequences of this is I think that a lot of people just don't like the litfic genre very much, and that's okay. I don't think that it's anti-intellectual to prefer books that are more plot-driven. That's fine. You can still have really strong theming and really strong narratives in a more plot-driven book, but you can see that preference away from litfic the most clearly in people who are like, I hated everything that I read in high school except for 1984, except for Pride and Prejudice, except for Lord of the Rings, like whatever token exception that your curriculum had to mostly litfic. And ultimately, I think that's unfortunate. I wish that more things from other genres were canonized, because I think that drives a lot of people to think that they don't like reading just because they don't like the literary fiction genre, or maybe even just because they're not really in a point in their life yet where they're able to enjoy a lot of literary fiction. I feel like I definitely liked it a lot less as a teenager than I do now. But regardless, even if you didn't have a great experience reading classics, it doesn't mean that the books don't have value just because they weren't for you. I think that shitting on classics is a wild thing to do. Like, there's a reason why people are still reading books from 150, 200 years ago in classrooms. Literature in general is so interesting because most books are individually authored, but they're still the sum of all of the books that that author has read, all of the literary history that came before whatever your favorite book in the modern day is. It all matters. It all contributed to whatever book it is that you love. And you're not obligated as an adult who reads for fun to read classics. You really do not have to if you hate them, but you should at least put some respect on their name, okay? Because if you don't, you end up looking just as bad as all of the pseudo-intellectuals who shit on romance books and just generalize them all as smut or something. Like, you're doing the same thing. Like, you can't reduce every romance novel to credence, and you can't reduce every classic novel to, like, Great Expectations or whatever. I mean, no offense if you liked Great Expectations, it was not my favorite book. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the classical canon is not above critique. I mean, most of the most influential works were written by authors that are straight and white and male and predominantly from the West. So especially when we use classics as a lens to study history, at least through to the 1900s, you're mostly looking at all of these eras from perspectives that were not particularly inclusive. And conversations like that about how the canon became as not diverse as it is, about the really problematic problematic things that are in some of these incredibly influential books, right? Those conversations can be really important, but most of the people that I have met who touch grass in the real world who like classics are more than willing to have those conversations. It's good to critically analyze things. You don't have to all of the time, like not every book has to be a homework assignment, but overall, I think that it's really good to understand that your favorite books have some flaws. Like, that doesn't mean that you can't love them. That doesn't mean that they can't mean the world to you. And being able to hold both the love and the criticism in your head at the same time, that's one thing that I feel like people who really love classics know very, very well. Okay, last take, finally, God bless. Ending it off on a bit more of a chill note. I like the way cracked spines look, and I will crack mine on purpose. I got a lot of responses generally on cracked spines, dog-earing books, annotating books, putting tabs in books, just generally defacing books until they're not in their most pristine form anymore. And my take will probably not surprise you if you've watched this entire, God knows how long this video actually is, but if you've watched this entire thing, you can probably guess that my take is just kind of, why do you care? If it's your book, if you spent your hard-earned coin on that, you can do whatever you want to it. It doesn't impact me. Somebody sent in a response about this that said that to be loved is to be used. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that. Like, books are meant to be read. If natural wear and tear is happening when you're reading, that's good. That's like the entire intention. But as for what I do, as for what my preferences are, if you're curious, I personally really try to avoid cracking spines with the books that I own. It bugs me. I don't like it. I don't like how when your spine is cracked and you open up the book, it always opens up to the same page. I like my books to have a natural fan after I've read them. I'm fine, honestly, with dog-earing pages, especially in a war zone scenario where I don't have a bookmark. Like, sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. And I'm also a big underline fan. I like a cheeky pen in my books when I have a quote that I really like. But annotating in general, it's just not for me. I think that tabs are fun. They're a good time. I use them once again to mark quotes, and I've gone through periods of my life when I definitely overused them. But unless you're doing like hardcore literary analysis, I don't know how you have so much to say. Like, what am I gonna write down? Ooh, funny, haha, oh my god, so cute in the margins. Like, no, I've never one time thought about doing that. No hate to people who do, it's just I don't have enough thoughts in my head to be putting them on paper when I'm reading. But yeah, that's just what I do. I don't think that there's a right way to mark up or own your books. It's okay for a book to look weathered and used if you've read it, especially if you've read it multiple times. Like the person in my responses kind of implied, it means that you cared enough to fuck it up. And I think that's really special. But that is it. I have been here for so long. This video is going to be a nightmare to edit. Overall, what I hope you take away from this video is it's okay to like things. It's okay to not like things. Books have existed forever. Bad books have existed forever. Books will continue existing even after the bad books that you hate right now are gone. Yeah, I think that those are the main points. These are philosophies by me that you probably already know if you watch my videos, but hopefully it's nice to have them like formalized for you or whatever. Like, I'm scared that a lot of what I've said in this video can be interpreted as negative, when really what I want is just for people to stop fighting and stop talking in circles around each other and making like zero effort whatsoever to understand the things that they hate, you know? If you disagree with me on any of this, that's okay. Just like try to be nice to each other in the comments. Don't get in fights with random people on the internet. That's just really a word of wisdom for you. On that note, I'm done filming. I'm gonna go like lay down. I have had too many opinions for one day, but I love you. I think you guys all rock. I hope that you always feel like you belong here, regardless of your circumstances as a reader or just in life, because I certainly feel like you do. Please take care of yourself, drink water, remember to eat, even when it is kind of difficult. And that is it. That is everything that I have to say. Okay, bye.